Good day once again. If you can recall, last time we had directing or leading the IT function discussed by Diloy. Still, for this session, it will be her to discuss to us about controlling the IT function. Of course, that's the last function or phase under the management functions, including financing after organizing. That is 6 of them overall, but 5 in chapter 5. Planning is in chapter 4. That's what I've said, and I kept on saying at the intro or in the introduction of the videos. Anyway, allow me to mention that once again, I will only be placing my inputs if ever there is a need for me to add more. But then if the reporter already said her piece gratefully, then I will not be adding any further, right? So let's go back to Deloy. So she will be explaining once again another topic, controlling the ID function. Let's begin.
Usually put at top of their minds is that in controlling the IT function, we have to think about how data, your physical security of everything that's holding your data or your IT environment is handled and controlled by your IT managers and the organization as well. So the major control categories involved in the IT function are security, input, processing, output, database, backup, and recovery. So each of these categories is intended to minimize business and audit risk via internal controls. And when examining IT function controls, it is vitally important for the IT auditor to assess whether control risk is within a tolerable range. Otherwise, existing controls may have to be strengthened or compensating controls may have to be developed in order to lower control risk into an acceptable level. Because of course, if you don't control the security risks that you encounter, it would be difficult for the organization to prevent data breaches or information theft coming from let's say coming from hackers or anyone who would try to maliciously get your information coming from your storage and use it for their own personal gain. So in controlling the IT function, the security controls that you can think of are both thinking about the physical security and the logical security. So with physical security, this focuses on keeping facilities, computers, communication equipment, and other tangible aspects of the computer infrastructure safe from harm. Also, physical security mechanisms include access, monitor, and review mechanisms. So, with physical security, you would have to mainly deal with your computer infrastructure, your equipment, your where your data is stored, your servers. You have to take care of that. That's how you monitor the physical security. You have to review as to who can access those hardwares. And at the same time, you would also have to monitor as to who was within the facility wherein your IT hardware or your computer infrastructure is located. Because, of course, what if you allow access to someone who isn't authorized and who shouldn't go in to the facility wherein your IT infrastructure is located? It's very difficult for you to be able to guarantee that there was nothing done to your equipment in the facility or while that person was there. Also, with logical security, part of the security system surrounding logical components is handled both via physical control and through computer-controlled access, monitor, and review systems. So, IT auditors need to recognize the many access points to logical components, review the access controls, examine the monitoring controls, understanding these review procedures, and perform penetration tests. So, with the logical security, you have to think this is more dealing more with the corporate data that's stored inside your computer infrastructure or your storages that you have within your company. So of course you can't just You can't just allow access to anyone from that organization to any of the data that you have. Of course, you also have to monitor as to who has access to what information. It's not all company information is confidential. Of course, it should be shared within within the organization, but it doesn't mean that everyone must have access or has the capability to edit or go through the data that you have stored in your systems, since of course everyone has different functions within the organization. Your HR of course doesn't mainly touch with the financial, so why would you give them access to such information if that's not part of their scope of their work? Of course, you have to regulate the access and monitor it regularly so as to assure that no information is leaked to the other departments, or no information is editable to other organizations. Not organizations, but departments that doesn't really touch, or their roles do not involve such information coming from the systems that you have. And then, of course, for the information controls, you have to think about.
All right, so before we proceed, so a while ago, as being shown, we have physical and logical controls. So physical, again, will protect the tangible aspects of the systems or information systems, while logical controls will be for the intangible. So to better protect the resources of the organization, the two should be present. So just like, for example, if we think about access to computer usage, so the doors, the locks, the biometrics, like the devices themselves could be physical, but the information like the ID or the password or the, let's just say the retina or the fingerprint, or those information that are to be inputted to those devices or to those tangible aspects of the systems, are the logical ones. Right.
The input controls and the process controls.
Oh, by the way, so you can notice here the words controls. A while ago, those are the security controls, now the information controls.
As well as the database and the output controls. So of course, for the input controls, the IT auditors should see whether the company follows written procedures regarding the proper authorization, approval, and input of accounting transactions. These functions are incompatible, so they should be segregated to the extent possible and controlled. Of course, just like what I mentioned a while ago, there are certain information that is only that should only be touched by a certain department of your organization. Not everyone should have the same information reflected in their systems once they access your system or your cloud. And of course, you have to monitor that one so as to prevent the other departments from touching the information for that certain department. You have to also especially it's vital for you to it's vital for IT auditors to monitor the people who are assigned in authorization, approval, and the input of the accounting transactions, because since just like we mentioned a while ago, these functions are very different, and different people should be managing that one. Not it shouldn't be just one person who should be handling these processes, but these should be different people handling these processes, since these are incompatible and should be segregated properly within the departments. IT auditors should really watch out for that so as to avoid confusion with the documents, and of course possible fraud that will happen while inputting the accounting transactions. Also, next, for the process controls, this would involve validating, error handling, and updating activities. sometimes performed after transactions are input into the accounting system, but such controls are often integrated into the input procedures, which is true because, of course, when you input, it should also be already a part of the employee's job to, of course, also validate, handle errors, and also update activities. But for if you want like an extra level of security, you can actually have this into a separate process control, what do you call this, a process control process that you can actually integrate within your system, just to add up like another layer of protection or security regarding your information that you have uploaded into your system, or the transactions that are input into your system. And then next is the database controls. So of course, with database controls, you have to involve the usage of the database management systems, which is usually designed with rollback and recovery features. So with database controls, of course, if let's say for example, you have already input your input a certain information, but then there are errors when you input it and you didn't notice it. Of course, your database system must it's recommended and must have a rollback and recovery feature, so that any erroneous transaction would be easily modified, and at the same time, as to transactions that were erroneously deleted can also be recovered easily into the system, so that there wouldn't be any more conflicts as to what information you have placed in your database. Also, this is to help prevent glitches corrupting the files in a non-relational database environments. Also, can also help in resolving concurrency problems, or an instance where multiple users are attempting to update the same data simultaneously. So you see the problem sometimes when there are a lot of users accessing the same data, and when there are multiple users attempting to update the very same data that you are also trying to update, there can be concurrency problems. There might be problems as to the information that is being reflected in the system. So of course, this can also help monitor as to who did the update and the timestamps as well, so that IT auditors and managers can properly see as to who made the final edit and or who made the final update. And of course, if this involves like a fraudulent activity, certain measures should be done in order for the organization to apprehend as to who made the fraudulent transaction, especially when it's inside the organization. And then lastly, for the output controls, access to the computer output should be controlled so that proprietary company information is requested and seen only by authorized parties, and so that printed reports remain within the company premises. A logical control is to ensure that only authorized parties can request certain output, whether it takes form of a computer screen or printed report. This can be accomplished via the ID, password, authorization matrix procedure, which should be reviewed periodically. So of course, just like we mentioned a while ago regarding the output controls, since there are multiple departments within an organization, those departments should not have the same level of access to certain information and their editing capabilities regarding that information. They should differ, and at the same time, there should be different measures as to how you can guarantee this for them, for every department to be able to see certain information that is apt and appropriate only to their department. Of course, this can be done through, just like I mentioned a while ago, logical controls such as setting passwords that are also stored in a separate database. And at the same time, this should also correspond to like security questions, just to ensure that no other people can access, no other people can use your access, since there would be an added level of security to this, such as using security questions and whatnot. And And then the next way as to how you can control the IT function is, of course, continuity controls. So when you say continuity controls, you have also another four set of processes that you have to take note of while thinking about continuity controls. This includes the backup controls, the data backup, hardware, and disaster recovery controls. So basically, it's just dealing with how you can recover your data with the continuity controls. So for the backup controls, the depth and breadth of a backup strategy involves at least two key considerations: the downtime and the cost. Of course, organizations, although it's very recommended for organizations to have like a backup process as to how they can have their information stored in their systems, but then at the same time you have to think about these two key considerations, which is the downtime and the cost, because if you don't think about these two key factors, you might end up acquiring or utilizing a backup control for your company that doesn't fit the organization and the type of information that you have. And at the same time, you might end up also getting a very costly backup control for which would also might end up not working well for your organization or would not fit well for your organization. So you have to think about as to regarding the downtime. When you are upgrading to a certain backup control, you also have to think about how much downtime are you willing to lose for the company, just for you to be able to integrate that backup control into your company. Or let's say, for example, you suffered major errors and you haven't checked on that, and you need to get a hold of your backup storage. How much downtime are you willing to lose, so that you would be able to get the information that you need from the backup that you have. And at the same time, you have to think about the cost. Is this cost efficient for your organization? Or the backup, is the backup process or the backup procedure that you acquired or will be doing is cost efficient for your company? And are you willing to shell out money for your backup strategy? So, of course, shorter downtime requirements would equate to higher backup costs. Meaning, if you would want that your downtime would be lessened in order for you to be able to integrate the backup controls that you would be using for your company, or you would be or for the your backup processes to be done in a short possible time. This would usually equate, of course, to higher backup costs, since this would entail you spending money for a higher end backup strategy if you would want shorter downtime requirements, if you would be thinking that this is more important. And of course, vice versa, if you would want lesser backup costs, of course you would have to think that the downtime requirements would also be higher. So the next continuity control is the data backup. With data backup, there are two things that you have regarding data backup, which is physical vaulting and the electronic vaulting. So for physical vaulting, this involves removing the company's backup medium from the company's computer and taken into an offsite location. For an electronic vaulting, this involves sending backup data over a communications network to an offsite storage medium. Although it's pretty much the same, but the concept is kind of different in a sense, like how you handle the related things for this procedure on how you back up your data. So with physical vaulting, of course, you have to physically take out your computer storage. Let's say, for example, you have a disk. You have to take it out and then, of course, transport it into another offsite location where you can store your data. Where you can store your data to an offsite location. And then for electronic vaulting, of course, this would involve sending your backup data into another offsite location. Electronically, you don't have to transport it. You just have to send your electronic data into, let's say, another cloud server perhaps, and have it stored in an offsite location outside from your business or your organization. Okay, and so lastly, we are down to the last part of the how to control the IT functions, which is the continuity controls, and of course the last two are hardware backup and disaster recovery controls. Now, as for the hardware backup, of course, naturally, aside from the computer infrastructures that we have, there might be times wherein we would require to have a hardware backup for the hardware that we have, where we store our data. Of course, this is to add another layer of security to our company information and data that we have within our premises. So of course, one way to control it is, of course, hardware backup, wherein we integrate hardware redundancy, which is one way of how we introduce hardware backup as a way to control the IT function. This is to integrate and introduce hardware redundancy in the computing environment. So when we say hardware redundancy, this means that for a certain piece of computer hardware, you would be acquiring multiples of that. You would be acquiring several hardware where you can store your data. Let's say, for example, if you're gonna buy a disk storage, one way for you to integrate hardware redundancy is that you buy multiple disk storages just to ensure that you have a safe and hardware safe way for you to store your data. And by that, you're also guaranteed that you can keep your information in multiple storage systems within your premises or within your IT function. Of course, this is also this should be controlled by, of course, the IT managers, just to ensure as well that unauthorized access won't be granted to people who shouldn't be accessing this certain information or data or storage. Of course, as well, you can also integrate a redundant array of independent disks. This is also one way for you to be able to apply hardware redundancy to your systems. This can include many levels of redundancy, wherein one is disk monitoring, wherein data is simultaneously written to the primary disk and to one or more redundant disks. So you don't just store your information into one disk, you copy the information into multiple disks. At the same time, that's also guaranteeing you that you have multiple copies if ever one of these disks end up getting ruined or getting damaged, and you can no longer access this. And of course, lastly as well, we have the disaster recovery controls. So basically speaking, for disaster recovery controls, it's just the company or you anticipating what do you do when disaster strikes. So you ask yourselves the important question of what are we going to do when disaster strikes, not what are we going to do if disaster strikes. So you have several steps as well to plan recovery controls whenever disaster hits. So first off is you plan for various disaster scenarios. You always have to keep in mind, and you have to be open as to what disasters can potentially happen. Let's say flood, fires, those can all happen, and there's a and you can't predict as to when that would strike or that would affect your company and as well as your infrastructure as in general. So of course, you have to anticipate and you have to plan well as to how you would be able to mitigate your data into other storage systems within your premises or outside, offsite your premises. Of course, then next is where to transfer the lost computing processing load. Okay, so also you have to think about this one, just like what I mentioned a while ago, always have like a contingency plan of sorts as to where you would save your data. You can just, it's not just that, you know, you would just store your data within your infrastructure or your company premises, but at the same time always have like a backup off-site as well, so that it would be guaranteed that you can have access to your data even if disaster affects your company or your business. And you also have to determine as to where you should be transferring this one, because you can't just transfer it into any other site. You can't just transfer it into the storage systems of other third-party providers. Of course, you also have to think about, just like what we mentioned a while ago, the possible data breaches if ever you would contract with third-party services, or you would also have to think about the contract that you would have to, or legally binding documents that you have to sign with them, so that they can also assure you that your information is safe. And next is, how is the company going to get the computer hardware, people, software, and the data to the alternate site? That should come along as well as to with the second question we're in, where you would transfer your lost computer processing load. Of course, by then you should have to think about your backup strategy already. You should know as to how you would transfer all your data, all your computer infrastructures, the people into another site, wherein you can still continue your processes, you can still continue handling your business, and at the same time without compromising your hardware, your data, or your people and the software that you are using in your main site. So since disaster strikes, you have to transfer it into another location. You have to think about how you would be transferring these equipment, your people as well, and of course your intangible data into a site wherein it's much safer and would greatly assure you that can still support your processes and the information that you have. And then lastly, the planner should establish priorities for the recovery, deciding which applications are mission critical and why one application or set of applications is more time sensitive than another. Of course, it should not be like once you be transferring once you be transferring your processes, your data, and your hardware into another site, you would need to run everything simultaneously all at the same time, instead of efficiently utilizing your backup data. You would be stuck because all channels might be blocked because of the huge influx of data that you are trying to process all at the same time. Of course, you would have to advise your planners as to which processes should be used first, or which should be ran first. And also, you would also have to think about which processes are very needed right now, very crucial, in order for you to be able to continue processing your business while the disaster is still happening, and you're just running on based on your backup data and your backup strategy. Of course, you're quite low on your programs, on your performance, so of course you would still be using your backup data, which is not enough and doesn't fully support what your entire business is doing. But you have to know which should be prioritized and which process should be running first, in order for you to be able to get back on your feet while the disaster is still happening. So that's it for the report regarding the managing the IT functions, and I hope that you understand how IT auditors and managers should be able to manage the IT function in a certain business or organization. Thank you.
Right. So Deloy was already ending the presentation. Thank you very much for your invaluable insights involving the contents of the chapter. I would say they're very well explained. So that's why I just am amazed about listening. So I did not interrupt. I interrupted some time before just to clarify with the terms, but overall, I did not actually. So once again, thank you very much, Deloy. And she said already her piece. Okay, so I think she's already over or done. She said already the thanks. So thank you very much for listening, everyone. Hopefully that you've learned something once again to this session. Thank you very much for paying attention and bearing with us along the way. And I'll see you next time. And we will see you next time, rather, for another learning session or moments in auditing in a serious environment. Thank you and God bless.